Hi, in this video, I'll talk to you about 5 breaches in the present giving us clues to be able to create an inspiring future story. The first breach goes from the anthropocentrism to the evolution of choral voices. What does this mean? So far, there's only been one dominant voice, one vision and one way of understanding the world, heavily based in the human being. It was a vision of generally a middle-aged man, Western, white, and many times heterosexual. Nowadays, thanks to the internet and the proliferation of channels, we have a choir of voices talking about the same reality. What does this mean? That many different voices talk about the same reality from different points of view. We no longer have one vision of what happens to us and of the world, but many voices talking about the same at the same time. This is overwhelming, different and incredible at the same time. There are 2 examples that illustrate very well this evolution of the role of anthropocentrism and choral voices. On the one hand, there's Afrofuturism. To put it simply, Afrofuturism aims at leaving traditional visions to create a new vision which is inspiring and empowered about Afro in the future. The second example that talks about this evolution is the virtual souls or digital models or digital influences. It's about influences created digitally, and they talk from their fears, their wants, their obligations to sell so and so products, and it's surprising how they talk to us and beseech us in the most emotional part, the most human part. This makes the division between real and digital vaguer than ever and talks from the most necessary for the human being, to connect from our emotions. The second breach is about post-truth. What does this mean? That the way we have understood history so far, that is, sweeping from the beginning until today, does not work any longer. The fragmentation existing nowadays needs other forms of talking about history and other forms of talking about reality. An example to illustrate this is how places of worship and people are mutating. Christianity has 2.4 billion followers and Kylie Jenner 118,000 million followers. If we make a time comparison on how long it took each of them to create a community, we can clearly see that religious institutions are losing their monopoly. This is also added to research on how to be immortal through our digital replicas. Clearly, it is a new world where the human and the digital are mutating and the new places of worship are changing. In this post-truth reality, it is necessary to become self-aware with regard to the discourse map. What does this mean? In an era in which we are immersed in our echo chambers, that is, we only listen to those similar to us, because of the algorithms, we lose the vision of all discourses or all truths that are being generated in the environment. To generate future discourses and narratives, it is necessary to understand the wider spectrum and different visions to be able to generate inspiring future narratives. At a time when we need more coordination and more cooperation than ever, we're being fragmented like never before, and it's up to us to make the effort to see that discourse from a wider perspective of self-awareness. The third point talks about the product that never ends. That is, evolves from that industrial vision of the product, finished and perfect, towards a vision of the product being continuously updated. Brands have generally been designed and conceptualized unilaterally by corporations. However, the rise of network media has challenged the identity and coherence of these brands. One direction doesn't make sense anymore to communicate brands to users. That same update logic is transferred to the product itself, which mutates from something finished to something being continuously updated to be valid in people or users' minds. An example of this was the life of Pablo, Kanye West's album. Although it wasn't his better version of himself in terms of hits, it was indeed interesting to see how he transferred a traditional use or a frequent use of technological environments to a musical environment. That is, what he did was to release the different versions of his record through a period of time so his own fans or users could enjoy those updates periodically. 2 examples of brands which break the centralized form slightly could be Bitcoin and a bathing ape. It's incredible to see how a bathing ape has been able to create a different visual ecosystem that can bring together its different collaborations, its different targets, and that the public itself, its fans, can adapt them and make them their own and also continue recognizing the brand for what it is. Another example is Bitcoin. In a decentralized way, they've been able to manage the brand, how it's been executed and carried out. It's really incredible to see these two practices, how they can really transform how they design the brands and the new narratives. The fourth point talks about the augmented human. The Vitruvian Man aims, through the symmetry used in architecture, to define the perfect symmetries or the perfect measurements of the human being. It's the result of the Renaissance, when the human being was the measurement of all knowledge and the center of the world. However, nowadays we have tools to redefine our own capacities. Therefore, we need to ask ourselves new questions, such as, what are our true limits like? What's the measurement of the human being in relation to the universe? Where does humanism lie with regards to technology? There are some cyborg attempts, such as those of Neil Harbisson or Moon Rebus, that are about the most extreme of the human and technology concept. They try to insert technology directly into their bodies. But we don't have to go that far to see this type of example. For example, Spotify launched different playlists based on our own DNA to learn which music we'd like more or which we'd like less. Also, there are increasingly more studies analyzing how our spatial capacities are increasing due to how we're playing video games. How we're increasing that visual and spatial capacity through our habits in different video games. It is undeniable that if the human being changes, their environment will change. Then, what will the cities of the future be like? So far we have designed and planned our cities or our environments based on the reigning institutions that were somehow the basis of our life: the town hall, the bank, the health center, the courts. But what happens when all those institutions or all those procedures that we do in those places move to the digital world, and those places physically occupied by our cities do not make as much sense? However, other needs are born very much based on the way we live now. For example, assisted reproduction centers, community parks, community schools. We need to redefine how we live our environment. There's no doubt also that technology will redefine how we understand cities and how we interact with them. The fifth and last point is publicity. What does it mean? This is the feeling of being in many places at the same time. Nowadays we travel from one content to another or from one platform to another practically without noticing it. That's the seamless and flawless concept which is so trendy in the technological and platform environments. This takes us to monopolized labels from the past not being useful anymore to define content. We consume in the same scroll a piece of news from a friend next to an ad in our Instagram feed. That means that labels are reinterpreted, platforms and content generate a crossroads in which nothing is clear and everything is together. One example, DJ Marshmello's concert in the Fortnite video game. Is it a video game? Is it a concert? Is it a friend's reunion? All those lines were really fuzzy and it was all at the same time. Another example is Rihanna and the Fenty show streamed by Amazon Prime. It was a mixture between a fashion show, a festival, guest artists and an ad on a sales platform. And you didn't know very well what you were watching at the time because the feeling was that you were watching everything and nothing at the same time. These have been a few of the examples we brought of how reality is mutating or how we human beings ourselves are using different strategies to create our paths to the future. There will surely be more and surely many more will happen. That's why I encourage you to keep your eyes wide open and you can detect which are those little breaches that will give us different visions of the future.